Welcome back, everyone. Today, as has now been the case for several weeks in a row, as is now customary, we are bringing on Joe DeLeone, a Notre Dame football expert who covers the team on Bleacher Report, and also the co-host of the Ruffino and Joe Show. We're bringing him on to talk about Notre Dame and Ohio State and the 2025 College Football Playoff National Championship. So, Joe, how are you doing this fine night?
I'm doing great, of course, in a great mood after getting to watch Notre Dame win in Miami in person. Amazing experience. Was one that I am going to just be able to remember for the rest of my life, getting to see that Jeremiah Love touchdown that he had, the game-winning field goal, how up close it was from the angle that I was sitting at. Couldn't be more juiced up for this national championship game, though. A season in which they have completely defied the odds. Here they are, and hopefully they can get the job done.
Amen. Yeah, that must have been a very memorable experience in the Orange Bowl. I know that as a Michigan fan, when I went to the national championship game last year, that was pretty incredible, especially to watch the two opening long touchdowns. That was very energetic. So that game full of ups and downs, the fact that you were able to come out with a win is definitely something you are going to remember. Do us all a favor, everyone, before we talk about the Orange Bowl a little bit more in depth and preview the national championship. Please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel, and also hit the notification bell. That way you can get notified when Joe comes back on the show, when we have other guests return on the show, and also when we go live Mondays and Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, and also when we go live to do play-by-play and commentary for the national championship. Also, check out Joe DeLeone on Twitter. Just search up his name. It's that simple. Give him a follow. Give the Ruffino and Joe Show a follow on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. And also subscribe to their channel on YouTube. And like Joe has mentioned before, you can just search up Notre Dame Bleacher Report, and you'll find his body of work there and his instant reactions to Notre Dame football games. So, briefly, before we touch on the national championship game, what were some of your thoughts on the Orange Bowl and Notre Dame's performance there?
One, I think just overall, the biggest positive and the just notable tone of the way that they played. I think that it has been so clear that this Marcus Freeman team, this version of this Marcus Freeman team, they know how to battle through adversity. They know how to lock in. They know how to flip the switch. Going down 10-0 and knowing how they just needed to trust themselves, trust their backup, Stephen Jelly, to get a field goal off of a drive that everyone thought was going to just end the quarter, for them to open up the second half with a long scoring drive and a rushing touchdown that really reinvigorated their attempt at a comeback. They stared down a loss multiple times throughout that game, and they've done so at spots throughout this year. That is what is going to keep Notre Dame alive against Ohio State. That is what is going to keep them in the mix against a team that they are 8.5-point dogs at the current moment. The other part, and a little bit more in the nitty-gritty in the specific, a lot of people are kind of questioning what should we expect from Notre Dame's offensive line, because Anthony Knapp, the true freshman left tackle, had a great year. He's not going to be available for the game. Rocco Spindler, who went down to right guard, could be stepping back into the lineup. He might not be available. One thing that I think went unnoticed is that Charles Jagasaw, who was the projected starter at left tackle at the start of the season, there were expectations that Jagasaw is going to go on to be, the next Ronnie Stanley, the next Joe Alt, the next top 10 pick. He is that gifted of a player. He goes down with a serious pec injury, and he's unavailable for the year. Nobody knew that he'd even be back by now. He steps in at right guard after not really playing at this final stretch of the season, steps in at right guard. Go watch that first drive back. They were able to create so much space for Jeremiah Love, and a lot of those big rushing plays that got them back into the game were because Charles Jagasaw played so well. So I think that it's going unnoticed, and Notre Dame fans should be pointing to, this is not like Ohio State's sake where their offensive line got banged up. They have real talent, and they have recruited at such a high level that in the most unique circumstance ever, their offensive line might actually be better in the national championship game with Jagasaw starting at left tackle.
Yeah, I think that Joe Rudolph does a tremendous job. I've mentioned his name several times on my channel, even when not talking about Notre Dame, as an example of an elite offensive line coach. What I will add on to the Orange Bowl is my takeaway from that game was Penn State had the better roster, may have had the better potential as a team, but they were not the better coach team.
No.
They not at all. And shockingly enough, Notre Dame had the better passing offense, which I think, for a variety of reasons, is why maybe I and others who I'm not a Penn State fan, but some are worried about like Penn State's wide receiver room getting gutted. I don't know if that's the case because Notre Dame's secondary is really, really good, and we'll talk about that here. But for them to have no catches by their receivers is just kind of like, what are you doing? Especially with Aller and especially with like Warren, like you can scheme things and use them as like a decoy, but couldn't even do that. But Notre Dame's defense is really, really good. I love their offensive line. I think the only thing I noticed about their offensive line that was a negative was just Abdul Carter being Abdul Carter. So I don't know if that's a negative at all. Speaking of that, how do you think Notre Dame matches up here in the trenches? We know that Ohio State has greater skill position talent, but Notre Dame is tough in the trenches. They're dealing with some injuries, yes, but like you said, the O-line might benefit from that. And I know the D-line, especially in the second half, stepped up against Penn State.
Yeah, I think that this matchup along both lines of scrimmage, I think their offensive line can go toe-to-toe with Ohio State's defensive line. It's a very talented group. They have two really good defensive ends in JT Tuamoilau and Jack Sawyer. Tyleik Williams is a guy that I like for this upcoming draft that is just really hard to move off the ball, but it's not like it's heads above anything that they've seen on this playoff run. Georgia defensive line, just as good. The Penn State defensive line's maybe just a slight step back, but Ohio State doesn't have an Abdul Carter that's going to be a top 5 pick. They held their own in every matchup that they've seen, even when they had injuries midway through that Penn State game. That makes me feel good about it. And then on the flip side, Notre Dame was gashed in the run game, not in the interior. They were gashed by outside runs and plays in which Nick Singleton and Quinshon Allen were given the ball in space. Notre Dame does a really good job in the interior. Their defensive tackles are great right now. Injuries that they suffered to their edge defenders with Jordan Botelho and Boubacar Traore, who they lost early on this year, that has been the weakness. Their interior of their defensive line is going to do a good job. It's just all dependent on can their linebackers, can their defensive ends rally and slow down TreVeyon Henderson and Quinshon Judkins, because that is going to be very critical in beating Ohio State.
Absolutely. I noticed in that first half, Penn State was using a lot of like almost jet running back motion, and Notre Dame just didn't catch it. And then they got to the outside and, boom, first down. And then there were some other plays where, Penn State, to their credit, has a really good run blocking O-line. Like, it's incredible. Like what they did against Oregon, what they did against other teams in the playoffs. And I mean, Notre Dame, like you've said, they're great on defense. They have veteran linebackers, talented linebackers, and Xavier Watts is everywhere. So what Penn State was able to do on the ground, I think, said more about them than it did Notre Dame's defense. And they kind of locked them up in the second half on the ground. It's why Penn State imploded after halftime, is what they were doing in the first half didn't work. Do you think that Notre Dame's offensive line is definitively better than Ohio State's?
Oh, absolutely. Even with the injuries, I think that Notre Dame's offensive line is better than Ohio State's. That Ohio State lost two of their best guys. Donovan Jackson's a great player. He's playing out of position right now. I look at the rest of the group. They've done a fine job, but we saw in the Texas game that reality started to set in. They had a great game against Tennessee. They had a great game against Oregon, but they were able to keep a lot of pressure off their shoulders by getting the ball out quick and getting the ball to Jeremiah Smith with short route concepts. When that wasn't opening up and Will Howard was holding the ball just a little bit longer, he was seeing more pressures. And that was also what kind of led to the forced interception, that he tried to get the ball to Jeremiah Smith in a spot that he was not open and that he was double covered. So, yeah, absolutely. I think that Notre Dame's offensive line pretty clearly, even with the injuries, especially with Charles Jagasaw stepping in now, that they're better than that Ohio State O-line.
Thank you. I completely agree with you. I just know that some people think that the O-line at OSU has been totally fixed, and the reality is a lot more of its schematics and everything around. Like, so this is actually something I want to segue into, because like what you said, when opponents can't run man coverage because your receivers are that good, when you have a gamer at quarterback and when you have elite running backs, it makes your O-line's job a lot easier than, let's say, Notre Dame's O-line, which, opponents more or less know they're going to want to run the ball and run it often. Do you think that, in saying that, I don't know if this is a perfect transition or not, but do you think that Notre Dame's man coverage and Al Golden really sticking to that, and also him sending pressure, do you think that could be an advantage? And also, what do you think some disadvantages of that could be against this aggressive and well-coached Ohio State offense?
Well, the disadvantage comes into play if Al Golden is just going to be hubristic and just say, oh, we're going to go one-on-one on the outside and we're going to be able to cover him. I think that Al Golden is smart enough to know that that doesn't win them the football game. The way that they prepared for Marvin Harrison Jr. last year, they weren't just leaving him one-on-one often. Benjamin Morrison played great, and I kind of wish Benjamin Morrison was available because similarities between Marvin Harrison Jr. and Jeremiah Smith. Benjamin Morrison can certainly play him close and play him tight in coverage, but I think that Al Golden's smart enough to know that there needs to be some sort of shaded attention. Bracket coverage needs to be on the table. There quite literally are 2 games of evidence with the Michigan game and the Texas game of how to slow down Ohio State's offense. Take away Jeremiah Smith. They seemingly, they know what to do, but they seemingly don't have that same pop, the same consistency. There were spurts throughout the Cotton Bowl where they lost juice. I think the one advantage that the Notre Dame has over what Texas had, Texas's strengths were at their safeties. Their outside corners were good. Notre Dame's corners are dominant in press man coverage, and their safeties, Don Schuler, Xavier Watts, are really good at taking advantage of risky ball placement. That should set up Notre Dame for turnovers. I think that in order for Notre Dame to win this game, they need 2 turnovers. I said last time I was on here that I thought that, I don't know if it was on here or it was a different channel, that I said that I thought that Notre Dame needed to win the turnover battle. I don't know if it's as direct as that, but they need at least 2 turnovers in order to get themselves a short field, whatever it is, to place them in strong positioning and to get the ball back.
Yeah, you said that on the channel. And then the funny thing about the Orange Bowl is Notre Dame lost the turnover battle.
Yeah,
and
I was
won.
so wrong.
I was dead wrong too. I was, I said Penn State's going to run on them. They did to a certain degree, and that if Notre Dame doesn't win the turnover battle, well, they'd lose. And it's been the theme of the team all year. They defy the odds. And what's even worse, if you're not a Notre Dame fan, or if you play Notre Dame, is they don't just defy the odds, but the analytics will tell you they'll typically defy the odds and then rub it in your face. I mean, they dominate you play per play. They force turnovers. They're just better coached than you. Do you think they have a coaching edge over Ohio State?
No, I'm not going to go that far. I thought that the Notre Dame had the coaching edge over James Franklin. Jim Knowles and Chip Kelly are phenomenal coordinators, and Chip Kelly has called some amazing games on this playoff run, and Jim Knowles has also called some amazing games. I think coordinator for coordinator, there certainly is comparisons, but as much as I would love to say that this version of Marcus Freeman is better than Ryan Day, I can't go that far. I just can't. Ryan Day has been around for a very long time. He is not James Franklin. He might have these brutal losses to Michigan in the past few years, but he has still gone toe-to-toe with one of the best Georgia teams that we've ever seen. He still has tremendous victories at this Ohio State program that need to be recognized. So I can't go head coach unless he does the same thing he did against Michigan where they white-knuckled the hell out of the game. I don't think that's going to happen, but coordinator for coordinator, I think it's pretty even.
Yeah, that's kind of my interpretation of it. I think that Knowles has had basically a perfect game plan every time except for the Oregon game this year. I think that I would take Denbrock over Kelly, but I'd take Knowles over Golden, so that kind of cancels out. And then I just think Day's been very successful in the postseason. If you look at his resume, his only losses are, like you said, one of the best Georgia teams we've ever seen, a Clemson team that if they just didn't play LSU that day, they probably win it all. And then 2020 Bama, who a lot of computers think is like one of the best teams of all time. Like that's quite the resume along with all of his postseason wins. So I agree with you. I think they need some turnovers. I think that they need to be strong on defense. They need to be smart on defense. What do you think about the offense against Ohio State's defense? Because against Penn State and against Michigan and Texas and even Nebraska, all those four teams were able to really limit this Ohio State offense because their D-lines were good. If you have a matchup edge over that O-line and you find a way to take away Smith or limit what Howard can do in the pocket, you're golden on the defensive side of the ball. But they'll still find a way to score 20-odd points or maybe at least in the teens. And their defense only allows like 12.2 points per game. I mean, they won 3 out of the 4 games I just mentioned because really their defense is that good. So what's an area that Notre Dame can exploit there, if any, or is it really just going to have to be Mike Denbrock's magic that he's brought to the table?
Yeah, I think that there's 2 areas that, again, that were presented in the Cotton Bowl, which was they gave up 14 points, but if it wasn't for a strip sack, and if there was a quarterback with a little bit better pocket presence, it was about to be a tie ball game. It was about to be 21-21. We saw that Trey Wisner and Jaden Blue were able to get going on wheel routes. They were able to get going on swing routes. Getting the running backs involved in the passing game, I think, is important for Notre Dame. We saw a really nice wheel route run by Ainias Williams in the Orange Bowl. I think that you got to go back to that. I think you need to, if your receivers are struggling to get open against 2 really good corners in Denzel Burke and Igbenogson, you got to find ways to create those spark opportunities by tossing the rock to Ainias Williams, to Jeremiah Love, to Jadarian Price. And the other part, Hunter Helm had an okay game. Felt like he had a couple opportunities that he missed out on. But I think that Mitchell Evans, we saw that there's a world where Mitchell Evans can leak open and be an opportunity for a dump-off situation for Riley Leonard. The biggest part at the end of the day, Riley Leonard catches himself up with these turnovers where he starts getting into a little bit of a rhythm, and then he thinks he can take this deep shot, this big play down the middle of the field or on the sideline. That's just not there. That's what happened with the first pick that he threw, happened with the second one that he threw that was picked off by Denai Dennis Sutton.
The D end.
Yeah, I know. I mean, that was one of the worst picks I've seen all year, and he's thrown some bad ones. He just needs to be smart and take the layups. Just take the layups. That's what I'm pushing this week. Take the layups. Don't go for the 3-pointers. You're not a 3-point shooter. You are a post-up big man. That's what this Notre Dame offense is. Post up, back down, wind down the shot clock, and then just knock that thing in. That's what they need to do and play to their strengths instead of trying to take deep shots against a team that's got really athletic safeties.
I 100% agree. And for those of you watching, no one has really beaten Ohio State deep since the Oregon game and the Cotton Bowl last year when their defense was on the field for 40 minutes. Like, they've had 2 defenses in a row that completely, it's their safeties. Like, they completely take away any opportunity for you to beat them. And I like the basketball analogy. Thank you very much for that. Yeah, they have to be big. They have to be aggressive and just take what's given, because that's how you beat them. I mean, Knowles' defenses, it's kind of the case with every elite defense. All the elite defenses want to keep everything in front of them. You're not just going to tear them open. And they don't really have weaknesses on the defense outside of maybe, holding at corner, or maybe Sonny Styles if he's lined up on a running back who, like you said, wheel route. Those are like really specific instances. Notre Dame has to take advantage of their opportunities. And I think with the staff that they have, they will. So speaking of that, what's your pick for the game?
I'm going with Notre Dame. I've picked Notre Dame this entire time. I know that you're picking against Notre Dame, which makes me feel better. As I was saying to you before we started taping, if you picked Notre Dame, I was going to tell you, no, we're not doing this because you can't jinx us. But no, I'm going with Notre Dame, and I think that this is going to be, as it's been, low scoring, tight ball game. If they win, I think it's going to be, and Notre Dame's kicked a lot of field goals, I think it's going to be like 24-21. Maybe 24-20, somewhere in that range.
It's going to be toxic like the Michigan win is if Notre Dame wins. Like,
yes.
Obviously, Notre Dame's much better than Michigan is. So, but I think that Ohio State won't play the same brain-dead game on that stage. But, yeah, I am picking Ohio State, but I think there's a world where Notre Dame wins. I've been saying it since middle of the year. Ohio State has vulnerabilities. People have bagged on me for saying, like, that Texas had several reasons to win, if not for a quarterback with no pocket presence. Like, the score's close enough to where even the box score watchers couldn't refute that. I think that this is going to be, my prediction was 28-17, close. Ohio State covers just by virtue of the fact that, like, they'll find an explosive play
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think this will be a good game. I would not be shocked if Notre Dame wins. There'd certainly be a emotional reaction to it because Ohio State's a big favorite. It's kind of the epitome of the year. But yeah, indeed, it's going to be a good game. Hopefully, it's one for the ages.
Hopefully as well, and I'm hoping the Notre Dame wins.
Of course.
Appreciate it as always, Sam. It's
Yeah.
always great to catch up with you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on, guys. Remember to like, remember to subscribe, and hit the notification bell. And also check out Joe DeLeone on Twitter. You can search up Notre Dame Bleacher Report, get his instant reactions, and also subscribe to the Ruffino and Joe Show. Type it in exactly how it sounds. You'll find it on YouTube. See you guys soon. Go Buckeyes, and also go Fighting Irish. Hopefully it's a great one. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And also hit that notification bell so that way you can get notified when new content from College Football with Sam drops. I appreciate you very much. And also share the video around to others who enjoy the sport of college football and love it as I do and as you do. And comment your thoughts down below so that we can have a conversation because I want to know what you are thinking. And join our Discord server where we talk college football 24/7 via the link in the description or down below in the pinned comment. Thank you to my Heisman Patreon members, Crash2488, Brascal Rascal, and Carlo OH. Thank you to my All-American Patreon members, Chris Lane, Ismar, and Tyler Nye. And thank you to my All-Conference members, John Lynn, Roaming Gnome, Matthew Sale, Austin Christmas, Joshua Jorgensen, and Will Loftus. Make sure to check out my merchandise store and or Patreon page or Super Chat down in the comment section below to support the channel. The Patreon page and merchandise store links are in the description or down below in the pinned comment. I hope you have a wonderful day. It is December, so Merry Christmas and also Happy New Year. I will see you guys soon.